September 4th, 1939. Bletchley Park, Buckinghamshire. The young Cambridge mathematician adjusted his glasses nervously as senior military cryptographers reviewed his proposal. These men had broken codes since the First World War using intuition, linguistic patterns, and decades of experience. Commander Alastair Denniston, operational head of the Government Code and Cipher School, listened politely but sceptically. The room filled with men who trusted their instincts and experience, not abstract mathematical formulas. Alan Turing's voice was quiet but certain as he explained his approach. The Germans believe Enigma produces random gibberish. They're wrong. Every mechanical system has patterns. Mathematics will find them. The veteran codebreakers exchanged knowing glances. This awkward 27-year-old wanted to use pure mathematics and machines to defeat Germany's finest engineers. It seemed absurd. What none of them knew was that this dismissed mathematician would orchestrate the most profound intelligence victory in human history, a breakthrough that would shorten the war by an estimated 2 years and save approximately 14 million lives. The challenge Turing faced would have broken lesser minds. By autumn 1939, Germany possessed what they believed was an invincible communication system. The Enigma machine, evolved from a commercial encryption device into a military instrument of terrifying sophistication, transmitted every German military order, battle plan, and strategic directive. Each machine contained 3 or more rotors selected from sets of 5 or 8, each rotor with 26 positions. A plug board added 10 pairs of letter swaps. The total number of possible daily settings exceeded 158 million. German High Command had distributed thousands of these machines across every branch of their military. U-boat commanders in the Atlantic, panzer divisions in North Africa, Luftwaffe bomber crews, Wehrmacht generals, all transmitted messages scrambled into seemingly meaningless letter sequences. The Germans called it unbreakable, and their confidence was not misplaced. Alan Mathieson Turing had been born June 23, 1912, in Maida Vale, London, to upper-middle-class British parents serving in India. An intelligent but lonely child, he demonstrated extraordinary mathematical talent from early childhood. At Sherborne School, his mathematics teacher wrote, "This boy thinks in ways I cannot follow, and arrives at answers before I've finished explaining the problem." At King's College, Cambridge, he published a paper on computable numbers that effectively invented the theoretical foundations of modern computing before any physical computers existed. At age 24, he was elected a Fellow of King's College, an honour typically reserved for much older academics. Yet despite this intellectual pedigree, military traditionalists regarded him with suspicion. He was socially awkward, indifferent to military hierarchy, and prone to explaining complex mathematics to colonels who neither understood nor appreciated being lectured. His shabby clothes, chronic hay fever, and habit of chaining his coffee mug to radiators to prevent theft made him seem more eccentric professor than potential saviour. Britain's situation in late 1939 was desperate. The Polish Cipher Bureau had made crucial breakthroughs before the war. Polish mathematicians Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Rojicki, and Henryk Zygalski had developed techniques for breaking earlier, simpler versions of Enigma using a machine called the Bomber. In July 1939, weeks before Germany invaded Poland, Polish intelligence shared their methods with Britain and France in a desperate meeting near Warsaw. They handed over reconstructed Enigma machines, technical drawings, and their mathematical frameworks. This extraordinary gift provided the foundation, but the stakings ADDAS. Germans had since modified their machines, adding rotors and changing procedures daily at midnight. The Polish methods no longer worked against these enhanced versions. The problem had escalated beyond human capability to solve through traditional techniques. Turing arrived at Bletchley Park on September 4, 1939, the day after Britain declared war on Germany. The Victorian mansion, 50 miles north of London, had been hastily requisitioned as headquarters for Britain's code-breaking efforts. The grounds filled rapidly with wooden huts, each housing different teams. Hut 6 worked on German Army and Air Force codes. Hut 8, where Turing would lead the effort, focused on German naval enigma. The stakes were immediately apparent. German U-boats were strangling Britain's maritime supply lines. Each month, dozens of merchant ships carrying food, fuel, and weapons disappeared beneath Atlantic waves. Without those supplies, Britain faced starvation and forced surrender within a year. The U-boats coordinated their attacks through Enigma-encrypted radio messages. Break the code, and convoys could evade the wolf packs. Fail, and Britain would be defeated without Germany invading. Turing's approach was fundamentally different from every cryptographer before him. Traditional code-breaking relied on linguistic analysis, frequency patterns, and educated guessing by experienced operators. Turing recognized that Enigma's mathematical complexity exceeded human intuitive capacity. Instead, he proposed mechanizing the code-breaking process itself. He envisioned a machine that could test thousands of possible Enigma settings per hour, using mathematical principles to eliminate impossible configurations and identify probable solutions. The concept seemed like science fiction to military minds. Commander Denniston initially allocated minimal resources, expecting the mathematical approach to fail within weeks. Turing received a small team, limited funding, and workspace in the drafty Hut 8. The machine Turing designed was called the Bombay, named after the Polish bomber, but vastly more sophisticated. The concept relied on a technique called cribs, where code breakers predicted likely words or phrases in encrypted messages. German operators were creatures of habit. Weather reports often began with Wetter, the German word for weather. Military formalities produced repetitive patterns. If you knew a word appeared somewhere in an encrypted message, you could mathematically test which rotor positions could produce that specific transformation. Turing's bomb would automate this process, testing configurations until it found settings that could transform the crib into the encrypted text. The mathematics were elegant but required engineering precision Britain had never attempted. Engineer Harold Keane from the British Tabulating Machine Company led the construction. The first prototype bomb was installed March 14, 1940 at Bletchley Park, named Victory. It stood over 6 feet tall and weighed more than a ton. Its front face contained rotating drums arranged in banks, each simulating an Enigma rotor. Electrically driven, the machine clicked and whirred as drums rotated through possible settings, testing logical contradictions. When the machine found a mathematically possible configuration, it stopped, and human operators would test that setting on a captured Enigma machine. Victory was slow, unreliable, and frequently broke down. It took hours to test settings for a single rotor order. Military observers shook their heads. This expensive, complicated machine seemed to confirm their initial skepticism about the mathematical approach. But Turing saw beyond the prototype's limitations. He worked with Keane to refine the design through each iteration. Fellow mathematician Gordon Welchman invented the diagonal board, an enhancement that exploited the reciprocal nature of Enigma's plugboard connections, dramatically reducing fault stops. The second Bombay, called Agnus Dei or Agnes, incorporated this improvement and became operational in August 1940. Victory was retrofitted with the diagonal board. By 1943, over 200 bombs operated across multiple sites, each testing approximately 20,000 Enigma settings per hour. The clicking symphony of these machines became Britain's industrial-scale assault on German communications. The breakthrough moment came May 9, 1941. German U-boat U-110, damaged by depth charges from HMS Bulldog, surfaced in the North Atlantic. Before the crew could evacuate and scuttle their vessel, British sailors boarded the submarine. Inside, they found the Enigma machine, current rotor settings, and, crucially, codebooks showing encryption keys. The captured materials were rushed to Bletchley Park under absolute secrecy. Turing and his team now had a window into German naval Enigma procedures. The codebooks revealed that Germans changed encryption keys daily at midnight. This meant the bombs had only 24 hours to break each day's settings before they became obsolete. It was a relentless mathematical race against time. With the captured intelligence, Turing refined his crib-based approach. The team identified consistent German communication patterns: weather reports transmitted at dawn, position reports at dusk. Submarines acknowledged orders with standardized phrases. These predictable elements became the cribs that the bombs tested. The intelligence was given the codename Ultra and classified above top secret. Only a handful of military commanders knew its source. To protect the secret, Britain had to use intelligence selectively. Ships couldn't simply avoid every known U-boat position, or Germans would realize their communications were compromised. Instead, the Royal Navy sent reconnaissance aircraft to discover U-boat locations before rerouting convoys, creating plausible explanations for every evasion. The impact was immediate and devastating to German operations. Allied shipping losses dropped dramatically through summer and autumn 1941. U-boat commanders reported that British convoys seemed to possess supernatural awareness of submarine locations. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, suspected communications were compromised, but his technical staff assured him Enigma remained mathematically unbreakable. The Germans never discovered the truth. Throughout the war, they believed Enigma remained secure, occasionally making minor modifications but never fundamentally changing their system. This misplaced confidence was Britain's greatest strategic advantage. Yet breaking Enigma was never routine. The Germans continuously modified procedures. In February 1942, they introduced a four-rotor Enigma for U-boat communications, adding another factor of 26 to possible combinations. For 10 months, Bletchley Park was completely blind to U-boat traffic. Allied shipping losses skyrocketed. In November 1942 alone, 119 merchant ships were sunk, totaling over 700,000 tons of vital supplies. Britain was once again approaching the brink of starvation and defeat. The pressure on Turing and his team became crushing. They worked 18-hour days, testing new mathematical approaches, designing modified bombs capable of handling 4 rotors. The turning point came October 30th, 1942. HMS Petard depth-charged U-559 inches the Mediterranean off Port Said after a 10-hour attack. As the submarine crew abandoned ship, First Lieutenant Anthony Fasson, 29 years old, able seaman Colin Grazier, 22 and married just 2 days, and 16-year-old canteen assistant Tommy Brown swam to the sinking vessel. They entered the flooding interior and retrieved codebooks before the submarine plunged to the depths, drowning Fasson and Grazier. Their sacrifice gave Bletchley Park the information needed to break the 4-rotor system. By December 13, 1942, Turing's team had cracked 4-rotor Enigma. Within 1 hour of the breakthrough, 15 U-boat positions were identified. The Atlantic battle turned decisively in the Allies' favor. Turing's contributions extended beyond Enigma. He developed statistical techniques called banburismus that could narrow possible key spaces before running the bombs, dramatically increasing efficiency. He pioneered Bayesian statistical analysis for cryptographic purposes, creating mathematical frameworks that remained classified until the 1970s. His theoretical work on machine intelligence and computation, though not directly related to code breaking, laid intellectual foundations for the computer age. The human cost of this intellectual battle was profound. The staff at Bletchley Park grew from 200 in 1939 to over 9,000 by 1945. Most were women, recruited from universities, and selected through abstract reasoning tests. They operated the bombs, transcribed intercepts, analyzed decrypts, and performed tedious mathematical checking that transformed raw code breaking into actionable intelligence. Joan Clark, a Cambridge-trained mathematician, became deputy head of Hut 8 and one of Turing's closest collaborators. She solved problems that baffled male colleagues who held higher official ranks due to institutional discrimination. Her salary was restricted because she was female, yet her mathematical contributions were indispensable. The workers signed the Official Secrets Act and kept their wartime activities secret for 30 years after the war ended. The intelligence gained from Enigma decrypts transformed every theatre of war. In North Africa, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's supply convoys were systematically sunk because Ultra revealed their routes and timing. British commanders knew Rommel's tank strength, fuel supplies, and out battle plans before his attacks began. The victory at El Alamein in October 1942 was enabled by intelligence showing Rommel was critically undersupplied. In the Atlantic, the U-boat war was won through mathematical precision of predicting submarine patrol areas. Allied convoys rerouted around wolf packs, and hunter-killer groups were directed to exact U-boat locations. During the D-Day invasion in June 1944, Ultra-intelligence confirmed that German commanders believed the main invasion would come at Pas de Calais, not Normandy. This deception kept German panzer divisions hundreds of miles from the actual landing beaches during critical first days. General Dwight Eisenhower stated in classified memos that ultra-intelligence was decisive in shortening the war. He estimated that without Bletchley Park's code-breaking, the war in Europe would have lasted at least 2 additional years, with millions more casualties. The Battle of the Atlantic, which Prime Minister Winston Churchill called "the only thing that ever really frightened me during the war," was won through mathematics. Historians calculate that without Enigma intelligence, Britain would likely have been forced to sue for peace in 1941 or early 1942. Yet in the midst of this triumph, Alan Turing faced personal tragedy. In January 1941, he became engaged to Joan Clark. They shared intellectual compatibility and genuine affection, though Turing had told her about his homosexuality. Clark accepted this, but Turing broke off the engagement after several months, unable to reconcile his sexuality with marriage. Homosexuality was illegal in Britain, classified as gross indecency under Victorian-era laws. Turing lived in constant fear of exposure and prosecution, forced to hide his identity while serving his country with extraordinary distinction. As the war progressed, Turing's mind moved beyond code-breaking to theoretical possibilities of machine intelligence. In February 1943, he traveled to the United States to share cryptographic techniques with American intelligence services. He spent months at Bell Laboratories in New York, working on speech encryption technology. While there, he discussed with Claude Shannon, pioneer of information theory, the theoretical foundations of machine intelligence. Turing proposed that machines could potentially exhibit intelligence indistinguishable from human thought. Shannon recalled decades later that Turing's ideas seemed like philosophical speculation but proved prophetic once electronic computers became reality. The war in Europe ended May 8, 1945. Germany surrendered unconditionally, its military crushed, its communications compromised throughout the conflict. The Enigma secret remained classified. The German military never learned that their unbreakable cipher had been broken from 1941 onward. The thousands of men and women at Bletchley Park disappeared back into civilian life, forbidden from speaking about their wartime work. Turing received the Order of the British Empire for unspecified wartime services, pale recognition of contributions that had altered history. After the war, Turing continued pioneering work. He designed the automatic computing engine for the National Physical Laboratory, one of the first stored program computer designs. In 1948, he moved to the University of Manchester to work on the Manchester Mark I, one of the earliest true computers. There, he wrote programs exploring artificial intelligence, developed the Turing test as a criterion for machine intelligence, and published groundbreaking papers on morphogenesis and mathematical basis of biological pattern formation. But in January 1952, Turing's life was shattered. His home was burgled, and during the police investigation, Turing acknowledged a sexual relationship with 19-year-old Arnold Murray. Both men were charged with gross indecency. At his trial on March 31, 1952, Turing pleaded guilty. The court convicted him and offered a choice: imprisonment or probation conditional on undergoing chemical castration through hormone treatment. Turing chose the hormone therapy to avoid prison, believing he could continue his research. The treatment consisted of injections of synthetic estrogen called stilboestrol, continued for 1 year. It caused impotence, breast development, and severe depression. His security clearance was revoked, barring him from continuing classified work. He was treated as a security risk because homosexuals were considered susceptible to Soviet blackmail. On June 8, 1954, Turing's housekeeper found him dead in his bed. He had died the previous day, June 7th. A half-eaten apple lay nearby, and cyanide poisoning was determined as the cause of death. The inquest ruled suicide, though some, including his family, maintained it could have been accidental poisoning from a chemistry experiment. He was 41 years old. The man who had saved millions of lives and shortened the war by years died prosecuted by the country he had served with unparalleled distinction. No state funeral honored him. No public recognition acknowledged his contributions, still hidden under the Official Secrets Act. His death was reported in brief newspaper notices describing him as a mathematician, with no mention of his wartime achievements or the injustice that destroyed him. For decades, Turing remained largely forgotten by the public. His wartime accomplishments stayed classified until the 1970s, when the British government began declassifying Bletchley Park records. The bombs were destroyed after the war, their very existence erased from official records. It was not until 1974 that the scale of the Enigma code-breaking operation was revealed publicly. Even then, Turing's central role was not fully understood. The rehabilitation of Turing's reputation began slowly. Computer scientists recognized his theoretical work as foundational. The ACM Turing Award, established in 1966, became computer science's highest honor. Gradually, as more records became public, historians pieced together the full magnitude of his contributions. By the 1990s, Turing was increasingly recognized as one of the 20th century's most important figures. In 2009, Prime Minister Gordon Brown issued an official apology for Turing's prosecution, stating, "We're sorry, you deserved so much better." In 2013, Queen Elizabeth II granted Turing a posthumous royal pardon. In 2017, the British government passed Alan Turing's Law, pardoning men convicted under historical anti-homosexuality legislation. In 2019, Turing was announced as the face of the new £50 note, making him the most prominently honoured scientist in British currency history. The statistical evidence supporting Turing's impact has grown stronger as historians gained access to classified documents. A 2012 study by economic historians estimated that breaking Enigma shortened the European war by between 18 and 24 months. The human cost of those additional years would have been staggering. The Holocaust was killing millions between 1941 and 1945. The Eastern Front was killing approximately 25,000 people daily at its peak. Every month the war continued multiplied the devastation exponentially. The mathematical elegance of Turing's approach has become more appreciated as computer science matured. His insights into computability created the conceptual framework for the digital age. The smartphone in every pocket, the internet connecting billions, the artificial intelligence systems transforming society, all rest on foundations. Turing established when electronic computers existed only in his imagination. His 1950 paper Computing Machinery and Intelligence, which proposed the Turing test, anticipated debates about machine consciousness that remain central to artificial intelligence research. Modern cryptography has evolved far beyond Enigma, but fundamental lessons Turing demonstrated remain relevant. He showed that apparently unbreakable codes could be defeated through mathematical analysis and mechanized processing. He proved that problems exceeding human cognitive capacity could be solved by machines designed with mathematical precision. He established that theoretical mathematics could have immediate practical application in matters of life and death. The bomb machines, over 200 operating by war's end, represented the first large-scale deployment of electromechanical computing for complex problem-solving. The total investment in the bomb program exceeded £2 million, enormous for wartime Britain. Yet, this investment returned value beyond measure. Each merchant ship saved represented thousands of tons of supplies, hundreds of lives, and millions of pounds in economic value. The intelligence that enabled Normandy invasions succeeded because German divisions were positioned based on false intelligence that ultra-confirmed they believed. The human stories emerging from declassified records continue revealing the operation's scale. Over 10,000 people worked at Bletchley Park and its outstations by 1945. They processed millions of intercepted messages, operated bombs around the clock, and maintained absolute secrecy. The women who operated the bombs worked in large halls filled with machines, the noise deafening, the air filled with oil and ozone. They adjusted rotors, recorded stops, and carried out repetitive tasks without understanding the larger purpose. Most never learned what their work accomplished until decades after the war. Alan Turing's personal eccentricities became legendary. He chained his coffee mug to radiators to prevent theft. He cycled to work wearing a gas mask during hay fever season, an alarming sight that prompted police stops. He buried silver bars in the countryside as hedge against German invasion, then forgot the exact location. He ran long distances for relaxation, sometimes running 40 miles from Bletchley to London for meetings. In 1947, he ran a marathon in 2 hours 46 minutes, only 11 minutes slower than the Olympic silver medal time that year. The theoretical implications of Turing's work extended into philosophy. His 1936 paper on computable numbers established that certain mathematical problems were fundamentally undecidable, meaning no algorithm could solve them regardless of computing power or time available. This insight provided the conceptual foundation for understanding what computers could and couldn't do. When actual computers were built in the late 1940s, Turing's theoretical framework proved immediately applicable. The Enigma itself was an engineering marvel that Germany's best engineers had spent years perfecting. Each rotor contained 26 electrical contacts wired internally in specific substitution patterns. 3 rotors in sequence created a polyalphabetic substitution cipher where each letter substitution changed with every keystroke. The plugboard added another layer. The mechanical precision required for manufacture was extraordinary, with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. German confidence in Enigma was mathematically justified. They had calculated that testing every possible setting would require billions of years. What they failed to anticipate was that mathematical analysis could eliminate vast swathes of impossible settings, and mechanization could test remaining possibilities at speeds exceeding human capability. The legacy of Bletchley Park extends beyond individual achievements. It established the principle of using mathematicians and scientists for intelligence work. It demonstrated the value of interdisciplinary teams combining different cognitive approaches. It proved that investing in theoretical research could yield practical benefits. The Manhattan Project developing the atomic bomb received more attention, but Bletchley Park's cryptographic work arguably had greater strategic impact on the war's outcome and duration. Modern historians analyzing newly declassified documents continue discovering the operation's scope. Bletchley Park broke not just Enigma, but dozens of German cipher systems. The Lorenz cipher, used for high-level communications between Hitler and his commanders, was broken by mathematician Bill Toot through pure analytical genius without ever seeing the machine itself. The Colossus computer, designed by engineer Tommy Flowers to break Lorenz, became operational in January 1944 and was technically more advanced than any computer in America until the 1950s. The preservation of Bletchley Park itself was accidental. After the war, the site was used for various government purposes and fell into disrepair. By the 1990s, developers planned to demolish the buildings. A preservation campaign, supported by veterans who could finally speak publicly, saved the site. It opened as a museum in 1993. The museum rebuilt a functioning bomb, a massive undertaking requiring original blueprints and expertise from retired engineers. Visitors can now see the machine operate, its drums rotating through settings, clicking and whirring as it searches for mathematical solutions. Alan Turing's personal story has become a focal point for discussions about historical injustice and treatment of LGBTQ individuals. His prosecution and chemical castration represent cruel examples of how societies persecuted people for their sexuality. Tens of thousands of British men were convicted under similar laws between the 19th century and 1967, when homosexuality was finally decriminalised. The contrast between Turing's invaluable service and his treatment by the state he saved has made his story a powerful symbol. The transformation from skepticism to desperate dependence occurred rapidly once the bombs proved effective. By late 1941, military commanders who had doubted Turing's approach were demanding ultra-intelligence before every major operation. Churchill visited Bletchley Park in September 1941 and afterward authorized whatever resources the codebreakers requested. When Turing and colleagues wrote directly to Churchill in October 1941 complaining about bureaucratic obstacles, Churchill responded within a day with a memo stating, "Action this day. Make sure they have all they want on extreme priority." The ethical dimensions of code-breaking raised profound questions. Every decrypted message, revealing a planned German attack, created impossible choices. Act on intelligence and risk revealing the code was broken, or allow attacks to succeed to preserve the secret for future use. Britain developed elaborate protocols for disguising Ultra's source. They would send reconnaissance aircraft over areas where submarines were known to be, creating plausible explanations for convoy rerouting. They sometimes allowed smaller convoys to be attacked to preserve the secret for protecting larger, more valuable convoys later. In the final accounting, Alan Turing's achievement was threefold. First, he broke codes that Germany's finest engineers believed unbreakable, using mathematical principles to defeat mechanical complexity. Second, he designed and engineered machines that mechanized intellectual labor, creating conceptual and practical foundations for electronic computers. Third, he established theoretical frameworks for computation and artificial intelligence that remain foundational 7 decades later. Each achievement alone would mark him as historically significant. Together, they place him among the most important figures of the 20th century. Yet his story also serves as a reminder of how societies can destroy the very people who serve them most selflessly. Turing saved millions of lives and shortened the war by years, then was prosecuted, chemically castrated, and driven to death by the nation he served. This injustice was shared by thousands persecuted for their sexuality. The contrast between his contributions and his treatment illuminates moral failures of mid-century Britain and the cost of prejudice. The numbers that people initially dismissed in 1939 became the tools that won the war. Turing's mathematical precision, his ability to see patterns in apparent randomness, his insight that machines could solve problems exceeding human cognitive capacity, transformed abstract theory into practical victory. The bombs clicking through thousands of settings per hour, the ultra-intelligence predicting German movements, the saved ships crossing the Atlantic with vital cargoes, all flowed from equations that military officers initially dismissed as academic fantasy. Alan Turing demonstrated that in modern warfare, mathematical genius could be the ultimate weapon, and that the mind-wielding equations with precision could achieve what armies alone could never accomplish. His legacy endures not just in the computer age he helped create, but in the profound truth he proved, that reason, logic, and mathematical thinking, combined with human courage and sacrifice, can overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The man they laughed at for trusting numbers became the man whose numbers saved civilization.